And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson, and a very special guest today, a reoccurring guest here on the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Sean Mulligan joins us today as we recap this past week's Super Bowl. A thrilling game, to say the least, went into overtime, almost going into double overtime, but we now know who is the champions of the NFL world, and for the second straight season, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. They become the first team since the 2003-2004 Patriots to repeat as Super Bowl champions.
Well, I'd like to go on the record and say I won $800 on this game, but I'm not happy.
You're kind of like...
It cost me $155 to get that $800, and I'm not happy about it.
So you would say this is the worst $800 you've won in your entire life?
Yeah, probably, because I've never been upset to win $800 before.
So there's a first for everything.
It's kind of like an oxymoron, isn't it?
It's kind of like a monkey paw. I wish I could win $800. Well,
hey, you could be worse. You could be a guy. I saw something online where a guy in Michigan lost $1.3 million on the game itself.
That's horrendous. Because not only did he probably bet on the Niners, he had the Chiefs.
I know exactly what
he should have hedged his happiness.
I'll tell you exactly what he did. So he bet $1 million on the Niners, I think, is what he did. He bet $25K on the coin toss, and the rest of it was on Brock Purdy MVP.
Ouch.
Oh well.
So, yeah, that guy in Michigan was definitely not a happy camper.
Well,
national championship.
The people in Michigan are not the brightest.
That is coming from a person that has hated Michigan his entire life, so keep that in mind.
Yes, and the funny thing is, I have no reason to hate Michigan. Well, kind of.
You were an Ohio State fan.
I did support Ohio State for a while, but the original teams I support, it's kind of like my hate for the University of Texas. The teams that I really support have no standing or dormant rivalries with Michigan.
Right.
It just makes no sense. I just don't like them. Although they do happen to be a key feeder factory to the New York Giants for wide receivers.
That is also true. That is very true. And as we all know, we have a lot of offseason news in the next couple of weeks with the free agency coming up in about, I would say, around 29 days, 30 days. So pretty much a month from now is when free agency kicks off in the NFL. We'll talk about that a little bit later on the show, as well as we know the NFL draft is also coming up as well. But let's talk about this game, guys. A slow start for both offenses in the first half. Obviously, we saw the Niners on their first possession going down the field, looking like they were going to put points on the board. Christian McCaffrey fumbles, leads to no points being scored on that drive. We saw a couple of turnovers forced in the first half by both teams. The Niners would get the scoring going first with the Juwan Jennings passing touchdown to Christian McCaffrey. So the Niners getting a little bit tricky in the first half. They actually had a 10-point lead at one point again on the Chiefs. As you remember, the last time these two teams met, they had a 10-point lead in that game against the Chiefs, but unfortunately they lost in that one. Had a 10-point lead. It was trimmed down to 7 after we saw 2 record-breaking field goals in this game. First, Jake Moody hit a 55-yard field goal, which at that time was the Super Bowl record for longest field goal in a game, but then was broken by Harrison Butker, who before the half hit a 56-yard field goal, or 57-yard. I'm not sure the exact total of yards, but that is now the new Super Bowl record for longest field goal in a Super Bowl game. So congratulations to Harrison Butker. He put up a pretty good showing in this game with a couple of field goals to keep the Chiefs alive in this one. They would get their first touchdown in the third quarter after the Niners muffed a punt, and they would take advantage on a Marquez Valdez-Scantling touchdown reception. They went into the fourth quarter with a 13-10 lead. Niners would respond in that fourth quarter. Juwan Jennings got a touchdown to give them the lead. But as we all know, you get Patrick Mahomes anytime, he has a chance to get his team back into the game. As we know, the Chiefs were down 3 just before the end of regulation. They got down the field, kicked the game-winning field goal, could have had an opportunity to win the game in regulation, but they were not able to get a touchdown. They forced the game to go to overtime, and that's where all the pretty much craziness happened in this game for a good portion at the end of it. We saw the Niners get the ball to start off. As we all know, this was the first game in the new era of the new overtime rule. So we had not seen an overtime game since the rule was implemented after that Bills and Chiefs game from a couple years ago. The Niners would start off on offense. They would go down the field. and they would kick a field goal. So this gave the Chiefs an opportunity. If they went down the field, all they had to do was score a touchdown. They win the championship. If they kick the field goal, then it becomes sudden death at the end of the day. Chiefs go down the field. They get a game-winning walk-off touchdown to Mecole Hardman. And as I mentioned now, for the second straight season, the Chiefs are the Super Bowl champions, winning this one 25-22. They win their second in a row, now becoming the first team, as I mentioned, since the Patriots to repeat as champions. And now they'll go into next season looking to become the first NFL team in history to win
Now,
three straight Super Bowls.
One thing I do want to talk about before we kind of head into this, you mentioned that it's a new era of football, and here's a stat for you. And I'm not sure if you know this, Nick. In the history of the Super Bowl, so there's been 58 Super Bowls, correct?
There is now 58 Super Bowls completed.
Yes, 58
All
Super
right.
Bowls.
In the first 50 Super Bowls, a 10-point lead was blown 3 times. And this is going to sound crazy, but Kyle Shanahan has blown that 10-point lead as a play caller in the Super Bowl 3 times in the last 8 years.
Yep.
Do you think this is a new era? Do you think this is a new era of football, or do you think that he needs to relinquish play calling?
I'll defer to Sean first, and then I'll answer after.
I've never really been a fan of a head coach calling plays, be it offensive or defensive. I always kind of feel that the head coach's objective is to be the head coach and let his coordinators do what the coordinators were hired to do. So it's kind of tough to say because you're not on the sideline, you really don't know what's going on, but everything everything seems to point to Kyle Shanahan called the plays, and and then you hear these things coming out, and this is more of a knock on Kyle Shanahan if it's true. Players saying that he never even briefed them on what the new overtime rules were, where Andy Reid has been going over this time after time. This is what the new rules are. You got to pay this kind of stuff. So hearing that, it's you almost don't know who to believe, but seeing the way everything unfolded, if he didn't tell his guys what the deal was, I mean, it's kind of twofold. Because, yeah, he blew the lead again, but you're not prepping your guys, telling them this is what overtime is and like that. And then third, you're just playing safe. You weren't really playing in that overtime to stop the Chiefs. You were playing to, I'm just going to let the clock run out and hopefully we win.
I'm glad you brought that up because you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. We've said this plenty of times before. There are a few sports that you cannot park yourself in. Hockey is a sport where you can kind of park, this kind of bleed time. Basketball is another sport like that where you can kind of bleed time. Football, baseball, 2 sports that you cannot bleed time.
No.
The other team is going to have the same amount of time to score, if not more, if you decide to bleed clock, if you don't do it successfully. And he thought a 10-point lead was good enough against the formerly one of the best offenses in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes did not have a good year, but that seemed not matter. Especially in that second half, too, once he seemed to come alive. That first half was pretty much all 100%. Niners defense. And then Travis Kelce came alive. I'll be real with you. I think Travis Kelce was more deserving an MVP than Patrick Mahomes. Yes, I realize he had no touchdown in that game, but the Chiefs did not win that game without Travis Kelce having that heroic second half.
Yeah, I can agree with that. That there's you didn't say anything wrong. It kind of to piggybacking off of me. I heard a caller the other day say that we were on Evan and Tiki. We were robbed of one of the greatest Super Bowl moments of all time. If they scored a touchdown and thought that they had won the game, you potentially could have seen the San Francisco 49ers celebrate a Super Bowl that they didn't even win. And that would have been hilarious.
Right. I think the issue for me was with the play call when it came down to it in the fourth, and even in overtime. They kind of like steered away from the running game, and on that overtime drive, they finally went back to it after there was a third down play where Purdy threw the ball, got tipped at the line, it was incomplete. They got a holding call out of it, so they got bailed out on that play, and then they ran the ball for pretty much the rest of the drive up until that third down play in which they went pretty much four wide with Kittle blocking as the tight end. and they had no protection for Purdy in the backfield. So he was pretty much in shotgun with no one to protect him there. And the Chiefs go all out blitz. He has to throw a quick pass, and if he has time and protection, he has Brandon Ayuk in the end zone for a touchdown, which we could have seen that moment that you were mentioning. And who knows what happens to the rest of the drive for the Chiefs? Obviously, they had to go for it on their possession where it was 4th-1. Mahomes had to scramble to get the first down and keep the game going. But there was just a lot of missed opportunities for the Niners late in this game, which seemed as if why they should have won. It's not as if they didn't play it. It's not like where the first Super Bowl these two teams played, where they had that 10-point lead with 4 minutes left. They had this 10-point lead in the second quarter. So there was still a lot of time for the Niners to make a comeback the Chiefs to make this comeback and win this game. But it just seems as if the Niners couldn't capitalize on some of these other opportunities that they had in this game. And that's where it really much fell for them, and they couldn't hold on to win this game. And now they go into another offseason where you're looking at it as what can they possibly do now to win a championship? They made all these moves to get these guys like Chase Young, who they acquired this year. Obviously, a couple years back, they got Christian McCaffrey. We saw how his impact was in this game. Now you have go into an offseason where you're looking at your team and saying, what more possibly can you do to get this team a championship? You've gotten all the pieces. You have built the team to win right now, but your window is going to start closing sooner rather than later because you're going to lose some of these players to free agency just because of your cap space situation.
I think it's closing already. It's not completely closed, but it's definitely closing.
I think the only reason they have a good opportunity is because I think what everyone said, it's not even that. I think the only reason why they have a good opportunity is look at the NFC. Is there really a team right now in the NFC that you say, you know what, that's that? It's maybe Detroit. Detroit's probably the best.
I think
option,
Detroit's the closest team.
But it's not really much saying anything.
This is also football, though.
Yeah,
these teams come out of nowhere. We could see the new look Chicago Bears next season be absolute world leaders.
Yeah, you never know. There's a whole offseason we have to get to see what these teams could be next year, because that's what happened with the Lions this past offseason. They went into it with a winning record, didn't make the playoffs. They made all these moves in the offseason, and they were a couple minutes away from going to the Super Bowl for the first time ever. And who knows what happens, but yeah, the Niners, they have a really interesting offseason coming up, because who knows if Trent Williams stays. He might retire after this game. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But yeah, I mean, it's just another crushing defeat for them, because they've been in all these opportunities the past couple of years, a bunch of NFC Championship games, 2 Super Bowls now, and they have not been able to get it done.
I think that maybe the bigger takeaway out of this, and I'm not sure that it's really a hot take at this point, but I kind of feel, and it's something that we're seeing before our own eyes, is Patrick Mahomes coming Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or Joe Montana or John Elway, whoever you want to name. It's, you can't give this guy the ball with time to go, needing a touchdown, because the kid's almost automatic at this point.
Well, it's even, especially in overtime, you can't put him in a situation where a touchdown wins the game. You have to go down the field and try to score a touchdown.
Absolutely.
If you don't score or you get a field goal, then you give Mahomes an easy opportunity to go down.
100%.
This is probably Mahomes' best game, probably the last, probably 2 months ago.
But
you just got to be on when it counts.
Yeah,
that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, listen, and he had a good game, but it wasn't like he had this amazing game.
Yeah, I think
it was came down. It was a tale of 2 halves for him. The first half he was absolute garbage, and the second half he was good, which turns out to be an good game. So
yeah, absolutely.
And I've been saying, but I remember, Johnson, I said earlier in the year, I said the reason why the Chiefs will have an opportunity is their defense. This is probably the best defense they've had in this entire tenure with Mahomes.
Oh yeah, and you have to say the defense carried him.
They played phenomenal, and they did a great job. I mean, they held Brandon Ayuk to 3 catches. Debo had 3 catches. The guy that led the team in receiving was Christian McCaffrey with 8 catches for 80 yards. So the Niners, they couldn't throw the ball down the field. They had no opportunity. I mentioned this pregame. I said, I guarantee you Purdy will be checking down a lot most of the time, because one, the protection might not be as great for him in this game against a Chiefs pass rush has been better throughout the entire season, and their secondary is one of the best in the game. McDuffie's been great. Snead's been great. They have Justin Reed at safety, who's been really good for them as well. They have a really good defense overall, and especially with Chris Jones. This
I
is a
do want to talk
really
about
good
this
defense.
So, can you remember the last time a team had the most points scored in a playoff run was 24 points or more? Was more than 24 points, excuse me. Can you remember that? Where a team, let's
Each
say it
game they
was,
scored 24.
yeah, where they had to go. So, like, for example, Kansas City, the greatest scoring effort they got all postseason was against the Buffalo Bills, who put up 24 points against them.
Right.
When you think of years past, you think of the Kansas City Chiefs last year, 35 points in the Super Bowl alone. You think of the Rams' journey to the Super Bowl. You think of the Buccaneers. All these teams have had faced a really high scoring offense. When's the last time you saw a defense just kind of carry a team like this?
The Baltimore Ravens, 2000.
2000 Baltimore Ravens.
We could say the 07 Giants too, Sean.
You could say the 07 Giants.
The 07, because listen,
Giants is another one.
It's a good segue from what Steve Spagnuolo's done, because now he becomes, I think, the first coordinator to win 4 Super Bowls in Super Bowl history, and I think, well deserving of potentially being a head coach next
2011 Giants
maybe
as well.
Not next season, but 2 years from now.
Most points scored in that playoff run, 20 points against them by the Packers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they say it all the time, Johnson. You and I both know this. This even goes for basketball too. Defense wins championships. It's been proven the last couple times. Obviously, last year wasn't the same case in the Super Bowl with that 38-35 final. But when you need your defense to step up and make a big play, that happens. Look at the first drive of the game. The Niners could have set the tone of this game if they went down the field and scored. And the Chiefs, to their credit, forced that fumble on McCaffrey, a rare fumble from McCaffrey that really changed the momentum therefore.
If a Super Bowl comes up like this, and it has in the past, I'm taking the number one defense over the number one offense every day of the week.
Yeah. And that's what the Chiefs remember, and that the Chiefs had to play the number one defense at one point in this postseason. They played the Ravens. That was the best defense they faced all in the entire NFL.
Also, their low scoring output too.
And they were able to win. And again, they had a great first half offensively. The defense was the reason why they won the game in the second half.
And it's actually, I don't want to say it's kind of funny too. You could point to so many different plays for all these different games that the Chiefs played where that could have ended the Chiefs season. The Buffalo Bills fumbling in the end zone. The Baltimore Ravens deciding not to run the ball. Same thing with the Niners deciding not to run the ball, or even getting the turnover early on. I felt like the Niners early on left at least 14 points on the board in that first half.
Yeah.
They left 14 points on the board right there.
And keep in mind also that blocked extra point in the fourth quarter was a big thing.
So this is my hot take on this.
Game.
I think if he actually made that extra point, the Chiefs would have won for it, and they would have gotten that touchdown. So I think all it did was kind of delay the inevitable. But I think
probably
missing that extra point, I think it gave him a new lease on life. Not in the way they expected it, but they would have had to go for it. They would have gotten at least 2 more plays off. And you don't think there's going to be a flag, or you don't think Travis Kelce or any of these other guys are going to get open that close to the goal line? I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, it's something to me, watching the way the whole game unfolded from start to finish. It's something that Bill Parcells has said. Great players make great plays at the right moments. And that's how that goes.
Right. Yeah, Mahomes, I mean, I mentioned the 4th down scramble to keep the game going. He had a bunch of times where he scrambled in this game. He had 9 carries for 66 yards. That led the team in rushing. He made good throws from those part of the game. Only had that 1 interception. And, yeah, I mean, when you're that good of a player, you know when to make your right reads and not force anything. And Mahomes did that this entire postseason. He did not force any passes this entire run. And they get a second straight Super Bowl ring out of it. Now they're 3rd in 5 years, and a potential opportunity to become the first team to get a three-peat in the NFL.
Now, remember, before anyone ever says he is better than Tom Brady, I don't care if we have this discussion 10 years from now. He can have 7 rings. There's one stat which will always remain eternal. His first regular season loss, his first postseason loss, his first Super Bowl loss, all to Tom Brady.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
All the Tom Brady.
Absolutely.
That is true.
Absolutely. But I think in saying with the whole three-peat thing, in my life, the only team that I've ever stared down the barrel at and said that I think that they could win this third Super Bowl was that San Francisco 49ers team the Giants beat in 90 or 91, whatever it was. That to me was the best team going into a three-peat. All the other teams, yeah, the Cowboys were nice, the Broncos were nice. Yep, right. This after that San Francisco 49ers team, this is probably the best chance you'll see at a team winning a three-peat. And given the state of the NFC, I don't see how they won't pull it off.
See, I'm going to disagree. I don't think they're early favorites for next year.
Right now, the Niners are the early favorite for the Super Bowl again next year.
Yeah, I don't believe that either.
I'm not saying they're favorites. I just in terms of the whole three-peat thing, of all of the teams that were staring down the barrel of the three-peat, I'd have to say that this, to me, is the best chance of all those teams.
Now, the year that the Patriots didn't get the three-peat, was that the year? I'm trying to think. That was 2005. So, what was that? That wasn't Peyton, right? What was the year before that? Peyton was 06.
Peyton was 06. The year before that, that was it Aaron Rodgers?
I think that was this. Was that the Steelers? No.
Oh no, that was Jerome Bettis' last game in Detroit.
Okay.
It was the Steelers, right?
Yeah, the Steelers and the Seahawks.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Hines Ward won the MVP, right?
Yes, he did.
Yes, okay.
So
yes, he did. That was painful in itself to watch.
I think the only way it doesn't happen is it's going to have to come from an AFC team to beat them, in my opinion. Maybe the Lions give them the best bet in the NFC. Maybe it could be the Niners again. I don't know. I feel like that. I mean, I haven't been the biggest Brock Purdy, fan, but I don't know if you can really get it done with them.
I don't really see another team in the AFC. I mean, the Bills are a nice team, but
Bills,
they choke whether they're the favorites or the underdogs, like your uncle always talks about. They seem to choke. It doesn't matter. Baltimore, I think they've shot their load. I don't see them going the distance. And then after that, it's basically a crapshoot.
I think the best option after that is maybe Cincinnati.
Maybe.
But the Bengals might be losing players in the offseason, so who knows? But
I mean, it doesn't look very pretty outside of and I hate to say it, but it doesn't really look pretty outside of Kansas City. I mean, there are some teams that, like I said, that have pieces in one spot or the other, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think they have a really good chance next season of potentially pulling this off because I'm trying to think if someone can remind me when was the last time we had a three-peat? Was it the Bulls? It just in general sports. It just in general sports. Is that the last three-peat we've had?
No, there's been three-peats after that.
Because the Yankees did.
The Yankees.
No, they didn't three-peat.
Yeah, they did.
They won 96. Oh yeah, 98, 99.
98, 99, 2000.
So that might be the last one, man.
I think that's the last three-peat that we've had.
Did Golden State three-peat? They didn't, right?
I don't think they did.
I don't believe so.
They were broken up by Cleveland. The Spurs never did. I'm
trying to think of the last three-peat we've had.
It might be.
I think it's the Yankees.
It might be the Yankees. The last three-peat we had in the NBA was the 2000. Oh, so no. I think it might be the Lakers. Because they won from
that early Lakers.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
The Kobe Shaq Lakers,
I forgot about them.
I think that's the last time we've had a three-peat. I don't think we've ever had that in college basketball, right, Johnson? Has that ever happened?
That's definitely. I can think of Florida.
I think UCLA probably did it with Wooden, but that was about it.
Yeah, no, I don't think in any of the in the modern era.
We haven't had any college. I'm looking at it right now. College football, we haven't had any since the 1940s. The last college basketball three-peat was 7 straight national championships. That's absurd. That's absurd. How'd you win 7 in a row? Wow.
I mean, it was the Mickey Mouse era.
Hey, John Wooden's
Also,
a great coach.
the NCAA wasn't the premier tournament back in the '60s. Don't let them tell
Hey,
guys.
listen, I'm giving
It was
you
the NIT up until 1979.
I'm giving you a pre-warmer, Johnson, because we do have March Madness coming up very soon.
We
So
do.
we're almost there to that point. So yeah, the last 3P we've had in all 4 major sports was 2000 to 2002 Los Angeles Lakers. So it has been a while. The last time it
I
happened
mean,
in the NFL was pre-Super Bowl. So
I was about to say, yeah, the both by the Green Bay Packers in the
right,
20s, and then that team in the 60s. But again, those don't count.
right. So this would be the first time in Super Bowl era if it were to happen, if the Chiefs can get it done next season.
And here's an interesting take that I'll take out of this. I don't think it'll happen because I think at the end of next year he'll get hired before it's even a chance of it happening. But if Kansas City wins a third Super Bowl and Andy Reid retires, Kansas City would be the perfect place for Bill Belichick.
Johnson.
I would like my nightmares not to come to life.
Yeah, you just.
I'm aware of that, but just think of the roster. He's got a quarterback.
Yeah.
They're coming off a Super Bowl win. They're a ready-made team, and they're a good team.
Johnson would be.
It's a perfect spot, but I know it's not going to happen.
Listen, I said when Brady got one, I was happy for him. When he was getting close to him, like, all right, if he gets to him, be kind of pissed off.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about
that.
We can also talk about Travis Kelce potentially retiring this offseason.
I don't think. No, he's not retiring this year.
He had that big. Listen, he had that big half speech in the locker room before the game where it got really emotional. Maybe
he already said he's going to play for the three-peat, though. He already said it.
He's going to play for the three-peat?
He said it in the post game. He said it literally on the stage. He said
my whole thing is, and this comes from listen to guys like Tiki Barber and Michael Strahan and Peyton Manning and these guys. Obviously, when you get a little longer in the tooth, at the end of the season, yeah, it's all fine and dandy to say, hey, I'm retiring. I don't want to do this no more. This is ridiculous. But as it starts to get closer to the summer and the spring, and you've obviously had X number of months off and you've healed up and you're not coming off the grind, you kind of view things a little differently. So even the whole Jason Kelce thing, I'm going to retire after the season, I'll believe it when I see it because once those competitive juices go.
He never said that.
Yeah, reporters have said it.
I mean, reporters have said it, but you can think it at the end of your last game of the season. You can obviously think, especially if it's a loss, screw this. I'm out. I'm not doing this no more. It's a pain in the butt. I need some time with my family. But once you've had that time with your family and you've healed up, you kind of view things a little bit differently. And, once the draft hits and free agency hits, those juices start flowing again. You're ready to go again, So I don't know.
Well, nonetheless, it's another championship for the Chiefs. They'll go look to 3P next year. As I mentioned, they'll be the first time in Super Bowl history that would be done. Patrick Mahomes in this game won his third Super Bowl MVP, so he's up there now with the good, elite status of, all-time greats in the NFL. So another, great job by him for this run. But we were remiss if we didn't talk about some of the other stuff that's going on in the NFL. Obviously now with the Super Bowl being over now, there are 31 teams now trying to, beat the Chiefs and make sure that they don't get this three-peat. And we've seen now some new teams getting, we've seen now the final vacancies being filled up for head coaching opportunities. As we mentioned, we've had a couple have already been filled. There were 2 teams left that hadn't filled their head coaching opportunity, and that was the Seattle Seahawks and the Washington Commanders. As of these past 2 weeks, we have now seen those 2 vacancies being filled. The first one being the Seattle Seahawks hiring Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald. So Macdonald now replaces Pete Carroll in Seattle. He will be the new head coach of the Seahawks. Maybe he can fix that defense because that was a huge reason why they did not make the playoffs last season. And mostly a big reason why Pete Carroll didn't get to finish out his tenure with the Seahawks. So they're hoping that he could do something that he did with Baltimore, in which he got the Ravens to the number 1 defense in the NFL. Now can he help this team get back to maybe the old days of the Legion of Boom? Who knows with Seattle. But the other head coaching news was Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, going to stay in the NFC East, as he's now the new head coach of the Washington Commanders. So Dan Quinn gets his first opportunity to be a head coach since that Atlanta Falcons run, and obviously did get them to a Super Bowl. Johnson and everyone here knows what happened in that Super Bowl. We alluded to that a little bit earlier on in the show with Kyle
That
Shanahan.
was the greatest Super Bowl of all time, and no one can ever take that away from me.
Um,
I was sitting there in your living
it
room,
was
You were.
wonderful.
talking like a madman, saying, "You know what? They can do this if they just get 2 touchdowns." And Nick's like, "Yeah, sure." And then it actually happened.
it still boggles my mind how that game went.
I believed in it.
I also did.
I believed in it.
Never 1 second I had any doubt.
So yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
say about Dan Quinn, I'm just really surprised that he didn't get hired by Seattle with the history
I
that he
thought the
had
same
with them.
thing.
I'm very surprised about that. I'm also really surprised, not so much about Belichick not getting a job, but I'm very surprised that Mike Vrabel didn't get a job, or
Yeah.
at least a assistant head coach, defensive coordinator job. I'm
It's-
very stunned that he's still out there as a free agent.
It seems as if Vrabel and Belichick are probably going to have to just wait out a season and then come back next year, like Mike McCarthy did a couple years back.
And personally, I think that that's a smart move, because you go to a team like Washington, that's a disaster. I mean, that could be a blemish on your record, and if you screw up twice, you very rarely get a third job.
Right.
So it's for a guy like Vrabel, it's kind of a blessing in disguise. Bill is kind of a different animal. He's going to get a third job. So I really don't count Bill with the third job thing, only because he's a legend. But I think it could work out in Vrabel's favor.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens with them. But before
Can you see them going to college? Either of them?
No, I can't.
Can you see Bill Belichick
No.
become the head coach of
I
Navy?
No.
God, no. I would see more
No.
in Vrabel, but there's no head coaching opportunities at this point for the college.
I don't think it's worth it for either of them, because they're going to be at the top of the coaching list next year.
Right.
So and Vrabel, rather Belichick, different than Vrabel, is essentially going to have his pick of where he wants to go.
And
So
we all know he's going to want a team that is pretty much in a win now scenario. He doesn't want to.
The thing I keep hearing is, if and I hope this doesn't happen, at least with the Giants, could happen with the Jets, but if things go south with either of the New York teams here, would
Johnson
it
have
be an interesting spot for Belichick to come to?
I don't see it.
He will never coach for Jets.
I can't see him with the Jets. I can see him more with the Giants.
I can't see him with the Jets either, but
because you have so much uncertainty about Aaron Rodgers. You don't know what he's going to do next season.
No, I agree, but my thing is, it begs the question, and I don't think the Jets are going to be much better than they were this year, to be honest with you. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers may add them a couple of more wins. I don't see them challenging the Chiefs for the Super Bowl with just Aaron Rodgers. It's not happening. So, I mean, it's possible that you're sitting here next year as a Jet fan, you're in the same exact spot, and Salah has to be gone. This has to be his last shot next year.
Yeah, most likely.
At least with the Jets.
I would say he probably gets, if it's another sour season, the only hope for him is that he make the playoffs. But if it's another bad year, he probably gets hired as a defensive guy. Someone will hire.
I think so. I think so.
That's what he's a really good defensive coach. But head coaching wise, it would kind of be like Dan Quinn, where you got your first head coaching job. Obviously, it didn't really go well, so you went to another team. You coached the defense for a while, and look, now lo and behold, you're now in your second opportunity as a head coach. Steve Spagnuolo is probably going to be in the same boat next year, in my opinion, because I think he should be up for a head coaching opportunity. The way he's revitalized this Chiefs defense the last couple seasons. He didn't really get a fair shot in St. Louis when he got hired after coaching the Giants to the Super Bowl. So I think
he didn't get a fair shot, but he also didn't perform well. I mean,
but you look at the team on paper,
underperformed.
They never really put a team around him.
I mean, they didn't, but he still grossly underperformed as a head coach. And these are things again that you learn. you know, he at least had the opportunity to go backwards and come back to Tom Coughlin or whoever was the coach at the time of the Giants. I don't remember who rehired him, but he was able to come back and reset himself as a coordinator.
Right.
And, you kind of take those lessons and do whatever. Hey, we even are hearing grumblings that Rex Ryan is potentially thinking about coming back into coaching. And he's never going to be a head coach right out of the gate right now. He's going to have to be
head coach.
He's going to have to be a coordinator first, but he's another one who's they keep grumblings keep going on about him coming out of retirement.
I mean, look who the Cowboys just hired to become the new defensive coordinator to replace Dan Quinn. They hired Mike Zimmer, who obviously was the former Minnesota Viking head coach. Took a year off, didn't do anything pretty much last season, and now he's back into a defensive coordinator role with the Cowboys. And obviously, age is going to be an issue where if he was to get another head coaching opportunity, he would be in his 70s.
I don't see him getting. I don't see him getting into the head coaching spot. I know he's back there because he has ties with Dallas.
Right.
He was an assistant, maybe even a defensive coordinator. I don't remember, but I know he was at least an assistant coach during those Super Bowl years. So I mean, he's got history with the Cowboys.
So we'll see what happens when it comes to that. But obviously, the Super Bowl week, we also had the NFL honors going on this weekend. We had obviously illustrious awards going out to specific players. We also found out the new Hall of Fame class for this upcoming season. We'll do a quick recap of who won each award. We saw Lamar Jackson winning his second MVP. So Lamar, great year. I had a very up and down year, but a very good second half got him this MVP trophy, his second of his career, as I mentioned. We saw Myles Garrett take home the Defensive Player of the Year. C.J. Stroud took Offensive Rookie of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year went to Will Anderson. So the Texans getting the two Rookies of the Year. They, just like the New York Jets the previous season, get the offensive and defensive Rookie of the Year. So Texans have some bright spots going for them the next couple seasons. Head Coach of the Year was Kevin Stefanski, not Steven Stefanski. If anyone saw the NFL Honor Award, they said Steven Stefanski. So Kevin Stefanski with the Browns, great job by him. Obviously, all the injuries they had going on in the season were on pretty much a fourth-string quarterback, and they got to the postseason. And that fourth-string quarterback did get the Comeback Player of the Year. Joe Flacco wins Comeback Player of the Year. So
well-deserved.
A very good job from him. Was able to win this award, get the Browns to a playoff spot despite all the injuries, as I mentioned before. And the Assistant Coach of the Year was Jim Schwartz. So very solid night for both Cleveland and Houston. And obviously, Lamar Jackson gets his MVP award. Christian McCaffrey won Offensive Player of the Year as well. So a very good night at the NFL Honors Awards for all of these players. But we would be remiss of not mentioning who also made the Hall of Fame class for 2024.
I do just want to say one thing, though. In this whole thing of quarterbacks, it's real interesting to see a running back win the NFL MVP.
No comment. Not going to comment. I am...
no comments.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. But being that as May, we did have 7 new members of this year's class 2024. Steve McMichael, happy to see him there as a wrestling fan. We all know what Mongo did for WCW in the late 90s, so congrats to him. Randy Gradishar, I hope I said that right, is also making it. They're both of the senior class for the Hall of Fame. And then the 5 members that are now elected are also Patrick Willis, Julius Peppers, Andre Johnson, Devin Hester, and our boy Sean, Syracuse legend Dwight Freeney. They are all the new members of the 2024 Pro Football Hall of Fame class of as I mentioned, 2024.
I'm not fully excited because I do think that Tiki Barber got snubbed.
I got snubbed once again.
I know you're gonna. I was gonna say this to him too, Johnson. I know you're gonna say.
Yeah, it's an absolute crime that Andre Johnson made the Hall of Fame, but
well,
Reggie Wayne didn't.
But Reggie Wayne deserves.
You're gonna sit here and tell me he's not better? You're gonna sit it? Come on.
No, I'm not saying.
I feel like it's semantics.
No.
I know not you particularly,
yeah,
but
I'm
know
not
it's
saying
semantics.
He's better.
Yeah.
I think they should both have made it.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I would be okay with that, but he's saying you can't have I'm sorry, you can't
We all know.
have
We all know how the Hall
him
of
with
Fame voting is for each sport. It's a
and
crook.
that's me as a Patriots fan. This dude was
I'll,
incredible in the mid 2000s.
Yeah,
I'll say this: football is not nearly as
it's not as bad as baseball.
as
We all know that.
backstabbing as baseball.
Yeah.
Guys are not in. Albert Bell hasn't done anything wrong, and he's not in because the writers don't like him.
Kurt Schilling.
What is that?
No, Kurt
You don't
Schilling
like
doesn't.
the guy, so he's not in the Hall of Fame. Come
That's
on.
not biased. No, not biased whatsoever.
Baseball to me is the biggest sham out there, but another story.
Yeah. But so we have our Hall of Fame class for 2024. Next season, we have a couple new members as well being introduced to the ballot. Hopefully, Sean, for us, maybe Eli Manning gets a ballot.
I would love to see Eli.
I don't know what will happen, but
I would love to
maybe.
see Eli go. I don't know. I do think as a fan, he's not even as a fan, as an independent football observer, he is a Hall of Fame eligible guy,
Well,
worthy type of player.
Keep in mind, Sean, he still has the record for most passing yards in a postseason. That streak is still alive. It's still
no. I agree. I just don't know. Like I said, I think he's Hall of Fame worthy. I just don't know if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I will say I would go out on a limb here and say he's definitely not first ballot Hall of Fame material. He's 116 and 116 as a career starter. You have to thank Ben McAdoo for saving his legacy and benching him. I realized it broke his Iron Man streak, but if he did not bench him, he would be 115 and 117 all time, or 116 and 117 all time.
You never know. They might have won.
They weren't winning anything.
And
I don't know. He might have won that game in
you never know.
wherever they. I think
they were playing the Raiders. They were playing the Raiders. I remember this. I remember that game vividly. Geno Smith was,
I just didn't like, and I'm not saying that at the time that Davis Webb was going to be anything, but you knew what Geno Smith was.
You know what's
why didn't you give the kid a chance?
It's funny you mentioned that. I heard a story this week with Sean Payton where Davis Webb, if you don't know, is on the Broncos coaching staff. And they were actually asking Davis Webb if he wanted to rejoin the Giants when Daniel Jones got injured. So they were trying to poach him away from Denver and try to get him back as the backup.
I know he was a big. I know Daboll was a big fan of his.
He did. He started a game last season.
He
or the year prior.
Well, he only essentially really brought him down from Buffalo because he knew the playbook. But here and there.
It was funny you mentioned that. I saw that story. I was like, wow.
I just at the time I was mad. I was mad that they benched Eli, but it was worse when you benched him for a guy who you already knew what he was, and you didn't bother to give the kid a chance.
Hey, it turns out Geno turned out all right. Maybe that was the game that instilled his confidence on his journey.
Maybe
you never know.
You never know.
You wrote him off. Remember that. But I would be remiss now with the season ending. We all know, as I mentioned earlier, free agency is just about a month away from as of this recording. So we're going to be seeing a lot of news being broken down in the next couple of weeks. The NFL draft is also still a couple months away, but I'd be remiss in not bringing up some of the notable free agents we're going to see in this upcoming free agency class that are something to monitor going into this upcoming free agency, because that could change the trajectory of this entire NFL world and maybe could lead to some teams getting into the Super Bowl and making a long run to potentially upend the Chiefs' chance of winning a third straight. I'll bring up the top 10 free agents, and you could feel free to, say which one you think could make the biggest mark on this upcoming free agency. And maybe if you want, you could give a prediction. We could save a prediction for later on.
Save the predictions for later. Okay, so we can do that in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. So we'll do that. Yeah. We'll do that in a couple weeks here on the show. But we'll at least bring up one guy that we see in this top 10 list of free agencies that's coming up that you are looking forward to seeing what they will do and where they might go. So the top 10 free agents, according to 3013, this is where I'm going off of this list of. Chris Jones of the Kansas City Chiefs, I would imagine to think he probably goes back to Kansas City to try to get that three-peat. We have Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen from the Jacksonville Jaguars, T. Higgins as of right now, but there is a rumor he might be getting franchise tagged by the Bengals, so we'll have to see if that happens. Christian Wilkins of the Miami Dolphins, Justin Matabuke of the Baltimore Ravens, Jalen Johnson of the Chicago Bears, Brian Burns of the Carolina Panthers, L'Jarius Sneed of the Chiefs, and Antoine Winfield Jr. of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'll give an honorable mention. Mike Evans from Tampa Bay, I think, is another big one. We could see something happening in this offseason. But out of those guys, is there really one guy you're looking forward to seeing what they potentially might do in this offseason? And do you think there's one player in that list that could really change, the
Yes.
landscape of this entire NFL season going into next year?
Yes, I'm glad you brought up Captain Kirk Cousins here.
Okay.
He is an elite floor raiser. He's not a ceiling raiser, but he's a floor raiser as a quarterback.
The curse is
I
still
feel
alive.
the curse is still alive. Whatever team, if Kirk Cousins comes back to, let's say, 80% of form that he was last year, you're getting a quarterback that's going to be very accurate. He's going to be able to throw touchdowns. He's a great game manager. And I think he'll be the perfect stopgap quarterback for any of these teams not knowing what to do.
Especially if they can't get a quarterback in the draft, absolutely.
I think he'll be the perfect stopgap quarterback. So I'm curious to see what Kirk Cousins will do and where he ends up.
Yeah, I think it's kind of seeming like he might not be back in Minnesota this upcoming season. I think he wants to go back, but I'm not sure the Vikings are going to bring him back. They have a decently high pick in the draft, and they could get a quarterback.
I think you get at this point in time, you have to move on from him because I mean, you can run it back with him one more year, but if you're in position to make a move for one of these top guys, you got to go for it. Especially if you like the guy. This has been my thing the whole time when everybody talks about the Giants trading up and this. Yeah, that's all well and good, but are you trading up because you think you need the guy, or are you trading up because you like him? If you're trading up because you like him, that's fine. If you're only trading up because it's that whole peer pressure, we think you need a quarterback thing, you shouldn't do it.
I'll tell you what, this is why I love free agency in this entire offseason, because there's so many what-if scenarios, and what if they do this, what if they do that. I'm already picturing Kirk Cousins on a bunch of other teams right now, potentially where he could be going in this offseason.
Kirk Cousins throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr. somewhere? Maybe New England?
Maybe New England. Yeah, maybe New England.
Maybe.
I think,
Kirk Cousins, there is a strong possibility Kirk Cousins could be your new quarterback.
I wouldn't mind that.
I know you wouldn't.
For a year or two, I wouldn't mind that.
Listen, it's going to be the Patriots are, I think, one of the most interesting teams because you could take a quarterback at 3, or you could sign a guy like Kirk Cousins or maybe even a Baker Mayfield and draft Marvin Harrison at 3.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
They're certainly the most interesting team. Washington, keep in mind, could do the exact same thing. That'd be funny if Kirk went back to Washington.
Cousins going back to Washington, this franchise that's burned him.
Yeah, that would be pretty funny. But
absolutely, that'd be
Washington
funny.
could be in the same boat. They could be like, you know what, we have a lot of cap space. We could just sign a quarterback. Why even bother and just take a receiver at 2? I doubt they do that. I think they go with quarterback no matter what. But you never know.
He is a guy. I said if the Giants were in a different kind of position, I would love to see him on the Giants. But the Giants aren't in that kind of position where they could sign him.
Was there a player there, Sean, that you had in mind, or
there's a player I've had an eye on, and it's a kid who I've had my eye on since he got drafted, and that's Antoine Winfield Jr. I know that very rarely are you talking about a safety being a game changer, but if he goes to a team, and I'll bring up Kansas City. I know they got a stacked defensive backfield, but if you can add a kid like that, it elevates your defense even more than the defense is already elevated. So he's a kid I'll be very interested to see where he goes. If he might stay in Tampa Bay, but if he wants to get paid, he's got to go.
Buccaneers are in a tough spot because they're going to have to pay him. They've been, linked to trying to bring back Baker Mayfield. They also still have to worry about Mike Evans because Mike Evans could be leaving them as well too. And he's had a long tenured career and a storied career with that franchise. Yeah. And there's a strong possibility he might not be on the team next season. I think. Go on.
No, I agree. No, I was going to say I agree.
I think for me, I think it's two players. They're both pass rushers because we know pass rushing is big when it comes to winning championships, and we saw, the Chiefs were able to do that with getting good pass rushers. The Niners had their pass rushers as well, giving them an opportunity to potentially win. Josh Allen and Brian Burns both being a potential free agent,
Yeah,
especially because I'm not sure what the issue the standing point of Brian Burns is right now because we know the Panthers. One point were trying to trade him, they didn't trade him. Now they pretty much are in a situation where they might lose him for nothing. But Jacksonville doesn't seem like as if they're going to be able to sign back Josh Allen because of their cap space situation. And Carolina, they're probably not going to be able to bring back Brian Burns because they pretty much pissed him off. So
yeah,
some team could get a big time pass rusher and these are two young guys. It's not like these are like old play. Josh Allen's 26, Brian Burns is 25. These guys are still in the prime of their careers, and you could get them
yeah.
for the next 6-7 years to be your top edge rusher for your team. I mean, that could
Absolutely.
change a franchise right there and then. I would
I
look at
mean,
a team like I hate to say it, Sean, but Washington might be a team to look out
yeah,
for and trying to get one of those
yeah.
guys, considering they traded Chase Young in the offseason.
I agree. These two guys, it kind of reminds me of when Reggie White was the first free agent from Philadelphia and he went to Green Bay. He almost, like you just said, it almost immediately changed the whole landscape of the Green Bay Packers
Yeah, they won a
just
Super
by
Bowl.
adding Reggie White.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, all starts within. I mean, your team right now that is drafting in the top 10, and you could sign one of these guys to free agency and could instantly could become a contender next season potentially.
I agree, and signing a guy like that, like I said, like with Reggie White before, or one of these two guys, it allows you to make one of those crazy moves in the draft, where all right, we've already filled the need. Now we can go get nuts, and if you're in striking distance, you could go and draft that quarterback if you happen to want that guy. If you sign one of these pass rushers, it takes one of those players off the board that you need to draft. You could draft for depth later, but in the first round, you could jump up and make a huge move and draft one of these quarterbacks if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, look what the Texans did last season. They jumped up to get Will Anderson after drafting Stroud number 2. And they had the luxury of having that second first round pick, obviously,
Yeah,
but they also did some moves in free agency and they got a playoff win. And for the first half majority of that game against Baltimore, they were with the Ravens in that game. So you
yeah,
never know how you could change your offseason. You can go
yeah,
from picking in the top 2, top 3, number 1 overall, and you can go from that to becoming a playoff team the next season and making yourself notable in the NFL. And I think that's
100%.
something to look for in this upcoming NFL draft because obviously we're a couple months away from that. There's still a lot of storylines going on. What will Chicago do with their first overall pick? Will they keep Justin Fields? Will they trade Justin Fields? Will they draft Caleb Williams? Will they trade down? What will Washington do at 2? What will New England do at 3?
Well, allegedly,
What team will trade up? Who knows?
allegedly, I did hear of a move made by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The
They
Steelers.
cut
Okay.
they cut one of
They cut
their veteran
Trubisky.
backup quarterbacks,
They did.
and apparently Mike Tomlin has allegedly had a love affair with for Justin Fields.
That would be an interesting
So
fit. I
it's
don't think
interesting. And
it wouldn't cost you a first round pick. It would probably cost you.
no,
I think I
no,
would say a high end second, maybe.
yeah, you could get him almost. I don't want to say on the cheap, but you could get him for a little cheaper. But Chicago is also talking about wanting back a historic
For the number 1 pick.
return for that number one pick. So we'll see what
It costs you
happens.
at least 3 first round picks.
Yeah, and it's something that everybody keeps talking about because we're Giants fans and there's needs and they should do it. Not if it's going to cost me 3 first round picks. I can't.
You
I
have to
can't
be
pay that price.
you have to be a team if you're going to pay that price. You have to be a team that's in a least of a winning. Like you have an opportunity next season, to maybe get something down the line and win.
Right.
The Steelers, I mean, listen, they made the playoffs last season. If they really wanted to make a move for Justin Fields, why not? But for trading your entire future for the next 3 years, I mean, that's where it gets tough because look what Washington did. I mean, they gave up that historic haul to get RG3, and they never really recovered
Yeah.
from that for a while.
These are the moves that people talk about. They're career-setting moves. This is either going to set you up for success for the rest of your career, or you're getting fired by making that kind of trade.
Look at. I know you know this one. The Herschel Walker trade with the Vikings and the Cowboys.
Yeah,
That set the Cowboys up for
yeah,
their dynasty in the '90s.
a legendary trade.
Yeah.
Legendary trade.
And I know once we get a little bit closer to the NFL draft, we'll be talking a little bit more about some of the storylines going into that draft. Last year, we obviously had that big breaking trade where Carolina moved up to number 1 to get Bryce Young. They made the trade with the Bears, and now the Bears, because of that, have the number 1 pick in this draft. They also have the 9th pick in the draft. So the Bears will have a very interesting offseason where they're going to have to decide a lot of things going on. They pretty much control this entire draft right now at this point in the season. It's pretty much a domino effect after what happens with them at number 1, if they decide to stay there or if they decide to trade down. But
yeah, no, I agree 100%.
Yeah, so we'll see. I know, Johnson, you're looking forward to it. You have the 3rd overall pick. You have an
Marvin
interesting
Harrison Jr.
offseason.
time.
Maybe Marvin Harrison, maybe a quarterback. I don't know. You have a new regime, so I'm not sure what the direction is with this team. And as a Giants fan, Sean, I think you and I are just looking to see what happens with the first 3 picks.
Yeah, again, kind of like last year, although a little bit different position because we're not picking at the end of the draft.
Right.
I need another guy who could come in and make an impact. I'm not saying I was thrilled with Deonte Banks, but he came in and played better than I thought he would.
He played pretty well, I would say.
I was scared because of the whole Eli Apple thing.
Yeah.
I'll admit, but the kid surprised me. He played very well, and that's Shane needs to do that again. Whoever it is, I'm secretly hoping that it's Marvin Harrison Jr. falling to the Giants. I don't see it happening. I think it's either going to be the kid from Washington or the wide receiver from LSU.
Yeah, it's going to be.
I think it's going to be one of those two guys that ultimately winds up with the Giants. But whoever it is, wide receiver, quarterback, offensive tackle, whatever it may be, it could be Joe Alt. The kid needs to come in and make an immediate impact. Whatever position it is, the kid needs to make an impact.
But listen, that's what these teams in the offseason are going to have to do. They're going to have to try to make an immediate impact, whether it comes to free agency or this upcoming draft. So we still have the season might be over, but this is pretty much to me the best part of the entire NFL calendar year when you get into this point in the season.
100%.
Your team can win the Super Bowl, but even if my team won, I'm still more excited about the offseason just because of the potential of what can go down in an offseason. Because of all these trades, all these free agency signings, and
100%.
The draft just gets, more, unpredictable every single year. And I think this is probably the most unpredictable draft we've had in a while. Because I really don't have
I could say that.
I really don't see, other than whoever's picking number 1 and number 2, I know Washington's going to say a 2 no matter what. But at least the top 2 picks are quarterback. After that, I have no idea what happens. Everything's very unpredictable with the draft. So I'm very curious to see how it all unfolds. But any final...
To me,
go ahead.
To me, it's just the offseason. To me, it's essentially what I said to you a couple of weeks ago about the Houston Texans and I forgot what other team we were talking about. It's the ability to reshuffle and reload your team and come back next year and do it again.
Yeah.
That to me is, that's priority for me. These teams, even teams that didn't make the Super Bowl, now is your time to reshuffle and come back again and do it again.
Yeah. So we got an interesting next couple of weeks and months to see how it all goes down. But any final thoughts we have, guys, before we wrap up tonight's show?
Patrick Mahomes is the new villain. That's not even me just saying that. That's actually, I think, for a majority of football fans, he is no longer the fresh new face. He is now the villain.
Well, is he a bigger villain than Kelsey bringing Taylor Swift into the NFL world?
I still can't view Patrick Mahomes as a villain yet. I know why you're saying it, Johnson, and I get it, but I don't know if he's there yet.
I think he's there. Do you think so? The first 3 years of Tom Brady's career, was he a villain?
Yes, I never liked him.
Oh, come on.
He was if Johnson.
I never liked Johnson.
went to Michigan.
I never liked
Right.
Tom Brady.
15-year-old Sean was beefing with Tom Brady.
I didn't like him. I also happened to make one of the biggest faux pas in fantasy football history at age 15 and drop Tom Brady in the middle of that year.
Well, that's why.
Going into the Super Bowl. But that's not why. I didn't like him. I don't know what it was about him that I didn't like.
Is it because he went to Michigan?
No, it wasn't even that he went to Michigan. I didn't like him. I don't like you coming out and getting. I know it wasn't his rookie year when he took over for Drew Bledsoe, but I don't like that you're unproven and all of a sudden we're kissing your ass and giving you all kinds of accolades.
Patrick Mahomes, man.
That's
no, but he didn't.
That was really Patrick Mahomes. Second year in the league, he won MVP. Come on.
But
look at what he did the second year in the league. He threw for 50 touchdowns.
You're right.
And 5,000 yards.
That was his best season.
Actually, well, no.
He peaked again.
He didn't peak his first.
No.
You can't peak after your first season, Johnson.
You certainly can. Oh, you certainly can.
No, you can't unless you're unless you're unless you're talking about Jamarcus Russell or someone like that. You can't peak after your first year.
Listen, man. From a football, just purely passing the ball perspective, I think his first season was his best season.
His first season,
I will take that to my grave.
He didn't
his first year as a starter. He sat behind Alex Smith his first year. I know that.
I just think I still can't view him as a villain yet. I'll say this: if they three-peat next year, he's 100% a villain.
Okay.
I'm still
hands down, he's the villain.
I'm gonna stick with my theory that he wouldn't be as big a villain as Kelsey because most NFL fans hate this. I'm not saying I do. I'm just saying most NFL fans have hated.
No, I can't stand. I'm very glad that you did bring this up because I was actually excited that they kept the Taylor Swift views during the game, if you will, to an absolute minimum.
Well, I will say you bring that up, but I did see a TikTok today where someone did a shot every time Taylor Swift was brought up, and they went to the hospital.
Well, so that sounds about right.
I don't know. She was only shown like 5 times.
Yeah, but every time he was brought up. So like in the broadcast booth.
Oh, I don't count that. Oh, that's bullshit. I want to. I'm talking about seeing her.
Well,
in the game,
could have also been drinking the amount of times that, like, the amount of seconds that she wants. So, like, if she was on the screen, you drank until it was taken off.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and she was shown a lot in the post game. Keep in mind.
I mean, then again, like, different than a lot of people. Well, not different than a lot of people, but different than a lot of people of this generation. I grew up in a totally different generation of football. I'm watching football for the football. I don't care what happens around it. I mean, the Manning cast is probably my favorite outside-the-box football thing that's happening, and that's about as wild as I get, but it's essentially 2 dudes breaking down film. It's not really all that wild.
Wait till you get the coaches cast of Belichick and Saban this offseason. You're going to go wild.
I will love that. I would love that.
That would be pretty fun.
Man, I would love that.
Be a college
I just want football. I don't care about all this other stuff. I'm there to watch football. I don't care about Taylor Swift. I don't care about Travis Kelce. I don't care about his brother jumping around shirtless in Buffalo. I don't care about Mama Kelce. Just give me the damn game and forget about all the rest of it.
All right. I think that's a great way to end the show.
I think so too.
But thanks again, Sean, for joining us once again. As
anytime, happy to be here.
We know you will be joining us in just a couple of weeks for the NFL draft, maybe potentially our free agency preview as well. We'll have to see what's coming on in the next couple of weeks. But we know that Mel Kiper 2.0 will be here for our second ever draft.
I'm very excited. I have my hairpiece ready to go like him. This is my favorite time of the year.
Okay. Yeah. Any last comment, Johnson, before we wrap this one up? I know
no comments.
No comment? Okay. I'll bring up one last comment. The Knicks were screwed last night, and I know it's a game, but yes. I just wanted to bring it up because I'm still pissed off from last night. But that is going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. The Super Bowl has concluded. The Kansas City Chiefs are once again your Super Bowl champions. 3 titles in 5 years, back-to-back rings for them. Will they three-peat next season? We'll have to see. We have a free agency coming up in just about a month, and the NFL draft is just in a few months. And we all here on the All Gas No Break Sports Show cannot wait to see what happens in these next couple of weeks with not only free agency, but with the NFL draft. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson and Sean Mulligan for this week with the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.